Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to Beyond the Gatekeepers. I am Reverend Dr. Vanessa M. Brown. I am your host and your moderator for this evening, and I am very happy to be here. Tonight, we're talking about the golden calf and the vote, and we are looking forward to this discussion. I want to bring on our guests. I want to thank our Facebook Live audience that are here with us. I want to thank our YouTube audience that's also here with us. We ask that you continue to like and share this particular discussion for tonight. I want to bring on our first guest. He is not a stranger to us. He has been with us on several occasions before in the person of Reverend Dr. Stephen G. Ray. He is the president of Chicago Theological Seminary. Reverend Dr. Stephen G. Ray, please come and greet our audience.
Yes, so happy to be here, Dr. Brown. Happy to be here talking about this important issue of being able to recognize that our vote is our act of faithfulness in the face of idolatry.
Indeed. Thank you so much, sir. And we're going to bring on our great Bishop Carlton D. Pearson. He's an author, progressive spiritual teacher, and thought leader. Bishop Pearson, will you greet the people for us?
Hello, everybody. Peace and love and blessing to all of you. Eager to get into tonight's hopefully intriguing, possibly a bit of provocative discussion about the idolatry of patriotism and Christian nationalism and how it conflicts with the pure faith in God and love for all of humanity, and how we have sort of muddled it in the recent issues with QAnon and Antifa and all that. It's going to be some interesting conversation tonight. You're going to love it. So call your mom and them. Tell them to tune in.
Thank you so much. Last but certainly not least, we have Bishop Yvette Adrian Flunder. She is the presiding prelate of the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries and the senior pastor of City of Refuge United Church of Christ in Oakland, California. Please let us greet Bishop Flunder.
So that had to be a phone call from God. It had to be. What a joy and a privilege to be in the company of some of the greatest proponents of new thought and evolving, emerging theology, I think, on the planet, and particularly given the conversations that we need to be having right now, and taking a real good look at what does idolatry look like in our nation, and through the eyes of faith and faithfulness, and how to encourage in some ways our people and the weariness that some of them are feeling right now, given all of the continuing, old folks used to call it chicanery, all of the continuing chicanery that we are hearing about basically every day, some other kind of something that comes along and can make our people weary, and wary, but also conscious of what time it is. So I feel so blessed to be in the company of two of my best friends, great thought leaders, very spiritual and very on time and in time for the time in which we live. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop Flunder. So let's get right to it. I guess about a week ago, we saw some gentlemen rolling in a golden calf at the CPAC. And that particular calf, my understanding is that the bottom ensign is an open room used by the Nazis in World War II. And it's distinct. What is distinct is its serifs or its wings. And somebody said that it's the bottom of the stage. So if you rotate that sign 180 degrees, it's the pattern of the CPAC stage. So I'm just very interested to talk to you all tonight and discuss, because we watched Paula White and several other evangelicals lay hands on the golden calf. I want to know what that means to you. What does that represent? What are they trying to say to the American people? And I want to start with Dr. Stephen Ray.
Well, I think, first of all, let me thank you again for allowing me to be a part of the conversation. But I think in terms of the golden calf, a couple of things are critically important. And I think one is to remember, and if you don't remember it from the text, remember it from the movie, the Ten Commandments, that everybody who left Egypt was not with Moses. I'm going to say that again. Everybody who left Egypt was not with Moses. So what that means is that everyone who came out at Azusa Street was not with Seymour. Everyone who came out of the Methodist churches and other churches were not with Bishop Mason, even though he ordained many of them. So the reason why I want to lift that up is because I think that there's a way that we can forget that the spirit that enlivens and moves through the spirit-filled church can also be the spirit that actually is working against God. Because, we sometimes forget that, the angel is a child of God too. The Satan, the angel of all the things that are the problem is a child of God too. And we can sometimes mistake the child of God whom we serve. And I think that what you see with the golden idol, what you see with folk who are calling the angels from Africa to show up, and fortunately, they don't know anything more than they saw in the Tarzan movie, so they were quite surprised when the real thing really did show up. But, recognizing that these are people who are performing a faith that looks very much like the true faith. And it's very seductive like the true faith. And that can consume us like the true faith. but we have to be able to distinguish the difference. And when they expose themselves, then we have to respond accordingly. But, I want to go back to where I began, is that everyone who came out was not with Moses. Everyone who came out was not with Seymour. Everyone who came out was not with Mason. And I could just keep calling the roll, because I think that there's a significant way that when you see what you're looking at, you need to stop playing with it as if it's redeemable, because there are some things that are simply not redeemable.
That's good. Thank you, Dr. Ray. Bishop Flunder.
Well, let me preface by saying I was not surprised at all, because the feeling that so many of the people who are part of CPAC and some that weren't there that are just a part of the whole entire cult of Trump, the feeling that they had without the object. They've already essentially crowned him a new day Elijah, or a new day Ezekiel, or a new day, just kind of whatever the market calls for on a certain day. They've already done that. And so to create a figure of him for photo ops and such the like did not surprise me, with all the hats and the slogans and the bumper stickers and the songs and the carrying on. I think that what I feel we are truly looking at, and this is something that I want to hear, again, from everybody, and hope we get some good questions and comments in the chat as well. What I think we are really looking at is when people suggest that they have to get back together now and take back what was stolen from them, where Trump calls it the votes, and some people talk about the votes. Other people call it the election. And what they mean by that is that a number of them are not certain whether or not the votes were taken, or that there was some impropriety or some malfunction in the machines. What they really believe is what was rightfully theirs was taken. Even if it was legally taken, it was not rightfully taken. Essentially, that goes all the way back to a belief system that there's a dominant race in this country that has a right to rule and a right to do better than all the rest of the folks, and a right, because they are chosen by God and know better than all the rest of us how this ought to be done. And when a bunch of people come along and actually come up with a way, what they consider a scheme, a methodology by which to supplant their long-term plan for turning this into a Christian conservative nationalist nation, which is their intention. Anybody that can come along and do that has wrongfully done what they were about to rightfully do. And so the leftover feeling is that they've been stolen from. You took from us what is rightfully and godly ordained, and we now have us a prophet who is not afraid to do wrong to get right put back in its place. And that's the person that they see in the type that is Donald Trump. He is a type. He's not that unusual, frankly, but he is a type who is returning them to. So I think that's that. And the other place I see it very clearly is in the intention to undo all of the rights that people have to vote that may pull this off again. Not the rights of everybody, but the rights for people who may pull this off again, which in my heart of hearts, if you excuse me for saying this, it tickles me. And the reason it tickles me is because if you create a process that essentially will also hinder some of your folks, first of all, and secondly, if you create a process and you say it out loud in a bill, don't you think that the folks are going to get together and come up with a way to circumvent that process the same way that they did it, circumvent it before? There's room enough now and time enough to strategize, to use your laws against you. how foolish and how haughty it is to think that you can pass a bunch of laws because you pissed because you lost. Not because it was illegal, but because you lost. And what's illegal is for you to lose. That's the thing that's illegal. So now what you're going to do is circumvent all of that and try to create a way to win and end up in many ways hurting the people that you're trying to help and helping the people that you're trying to hurt. That is what my heart says always happens to a golden calf. Every doggone time that it shows up literally or figuratively, it ends up in a catastrophe, which is what happened in the story of Egypt, when the fire of God came down, knocked a hole in the ground, the calf fell in the ground, the people started dropping and dying. It was just a huge mess. And I think that to some degree, we are headed to a huge mess in and around religion and faith, and a necessary mess in order for us to restart.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Bishop. Bishop Pearson.
Brilliant. I agree with everything that has been said. Dr. Ray said not all of the people who came out of Egypt were for their deliverer, Moses. They weren't even necessarily for the Jewish God or the Hebrew God. They were angry and frightened. They had not heard from God in over 400 years, not the Jewish God. And all of a sudden, God shows up with a tantrum of blood and flies and lice and ultimately the death of sons. And so there's a lot of blood and violence and vitriol in the movement. Idolatry is the worship of an idol or a cult image, being, as a physical image, such as a statue, a person, or an idol. The idol is the Greek word icon. So Trump has become an icon, an idol to these people. In a political sense, it's a conspiracy, which refers to a group of people united in the goal of usurping, altering, or overthrowing an established political power. As Bishop Flunder said, these people really do believe, and I've done some research, and I have friends that are telling me and sending me all this, arguing with me, that there is evidence, possibly, of large fraudulent votes. They believe that with all their hearts, many of the Republicans. Another part of this is that I think that judges, mayors, governors, senators, congressmen, generals, admirals in the military force, a lot of these people have either been bought off or there's something that the cabal has on them that they can't be against Trump and they can't reveal what they supposedly know about some things. They're all caught up in the some kind of conspiracy. They're afraid. They're afraid of the powers that be, and they don't know what powers are there. Who is big enough and strong enough to usurp him or herself enough to come against an entire country and its democracy, and then to tie that in with COVID? And a lot of Trump's followers believe that the hoax that they consider the pandemic to be was sent to unearth or to upset the election so that Trump would lose. There's all kinds of wild ideas going around and a form of psychosis, insanity. These people, it's not just mental illness, it's poor mental health. Religion means, from a Latin word, means to bind or to keep bound. So they're bound together, but they are bound by their commitment to their fear-based theologies, that it's them against the world, the liberals, the progressives, anything that is out of tradition. So we're looking at a lot of this, and there are a lot of people in the armed forces, in the high military position, and they too have been caught in compromising positions set up by the Russians or whoever, and they can't do anything but cooperate with whatever this energy is that wants to keep America white, controlled by whites. Evangelicals is the most vulnerable group, just like the church for the Black community is the spiritual station as well as the social hub, and they go through the churches to get votes and to get the evangelicals are moving in among African American churches and pastors, giving money. I was a part of all that. I saw them do it. They would set you up and you'd get grants from the government, but then they own you and you're beholden to them. That's what they've been doing with Black leaders in powerful positions, whether they're entertainers or whether they're preachers. big televangelists that they have some influence with. They can pick up the phone, they can call your bank, or they can call you and say, here's what we need. So it's a well-planned conspiracy of control. And people who are losing control in this country numerically with votes are panicking because the white man is soon going to be the minority in this country, and they psychologically cannot handle it. When Moses seemed to take too long returning from the mountain, the Israelites turned to Moses' brother, Aaron, as you know the story, and they wanted an idol like they had in Egypt. They actually trusted the gods of Egypt more than they did the gods of Israel, because they hadn't seen the God of Israel do anything but throw a tantrum, and they were afraid of that God. So these people have said, and it's gold, so it's the worship of money and idols and comfort, and they're not happy with the way their God is allowing things to occur. So they're taking matters into their own hands, the same way the Crusaders, cruz is the Latin word for cross, you went to Jerusalem and bloodied the city to oust the Muslims and the Arabs and the people of darker hue. The Catholic Church is in on part of this. Rome and London, it's a huge conspiracy with secret societies, and I don't know if we'll get into all that tonight, but anyway, it's not just poor people, it's ignorant people who are convinced that they're smart, convinced that they're strong, and yet at the same time have a terrible self-image problem. They don't feel adequate, they feel cheated, they feel betrayed, they feel victimized, and so they're fighting back in their flesh, and they think it's God. Religion does that to people.
Thank you, Bishop Pearson. The three of you lead institutions. You lead your own fellowships, where it's multi-denominational. Many people come to the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries. Bishop Pearson, you've been around for many, many years in high places, as well as higher dimensions. You all are over many things. You know many people. You lead many people. Many people listen to you. My question to you tonight is, what do we do? People want to know, what should we be doing? Progressive thinking people want to know what to do. Students want to know what to do, who are reason why they're coming into theological education is because they're tired of all of this stuff. And they want to know what to go back to say to some of their churches. What do you say to the fellowship? And so I'll start with Bishop Pearson.
Well, sometimes you have to, when you see, I've been saying for a while that the universe is correcting itself.
Yes.
A lot of this, and including Donald Trump, was put in position to expose what needs to be ultimately expelled. That is occurring right now. The aftermath is a violent revolt of people who say, we don't want to be exposed. We will not be expelled. We're going to hold on as we have for at least the last 400 years. You're not changing anything, not a statue or a statute. We control this country. We're sent by God, called by God, anointed by God, in whom we trust, they say, when it's really guns that they trust more than God. But it's a religious movement. It's a religious cult movement, whether that's Christian nationalists or regular political nationalists. They believe that America is set up and sent by God. So they're very devoted to this. And so right now I'm saying to people, don't overreact. Respond, but don't react, because we have to let this thing play out. Let them show us who they really are, how violent, how vicious, how mentally ill they are, how cultish they are, how unlike Christ they are. This is something the universe has allowed to be exposed. We can't stop it. Let it run its course. When the dust settles, there'll be the rebirthing of a country, the rebuilding of a country, the rebooting of the country, the rebranding of a country, and a consciousness, and a character, and even a Congress. So this is something that hasn't happened in hundreds of years, but it's going to happen. Nothing we can do will stop it. We just want to help guide people through it. When I say go with the flow, also grow with the flow, especially when it becomes a flood, as it's at flood stage now. But let's grow with this thing, even if we don't go with it. Let's grow with it and see what happens. Let these people expose themselves, and let this conspiracy run out of gas, because it's doing that. But we have to see all this evil, all this vicious, violent anger in white, red-faced folks, not just whites, but these are the leaders of the movement. Paula White, I've known for years. I ordained her first husband, Randy. I know she's not a conservative in the sense that this is where her money is right now. This is where her opportunity is right now. And so them laying hands is very unscriptural, but the scripture doesn't mean anything to them right now. Only their agenda to control. And they're losing control both of themselves and of the country. And I'm actually enjoying watching this thing occur. It's hurtful, it's harmful, it's a little bit frightening, but it's part of what needs to happen in order for us to settle at a new truth in the Western world.
And Bishop Pearson, before I want to go to Dr. Stephen Ray, but before I do, you made mention of secret societies. Are you talking about the Illuminati? Can you say more about, because that's kind of like an undercurrent. We hear that all the time. Who are you mentioning? What is this about?
Scriptures refers to the mystery of iniquity that is at work among us, spiritual wickedness and high, and I add hidden places. The Illuminati started in Germany, 1776, the same year we became a country in 77 when we won our independence from Britain. Excuse me. The layout of the Pentagon or the pentagram, which the whole city of DC, which is Washington, D.C., London, and the Vatican, the three cities that are not owned by the countries in which they reside. They are secret societies. The Illuminati, even the New World Order. There are very powerful entities in this country that's behind. This isn't a war between Democrats and Republicans. It's probably a conflict between those mystery religions and those secret societies, many of whom don't even live in this country, or they're not headquartered here. But they do go all the way back to the Roman Empire and how we are part of the Roman Empire. This is a battle that's been waging for hundreds of years, not just the 4 years that Trump's been in office, or for the 200 years that America has been a country. So we're dealing with the mystery of iniquity.
Yeah.
That's what Paul. So it is the missed story of iniquity. Now, what's happening, if you listen carefully, they are unveiling themselves because they have greater confidence in their ability to do what they say they're going to do. So they don't mind us learning about them. It's like, we got this. You guys can know all you want, protest all you want. We're going to get what we want. But the great, great, great grandchildren of the originators of some of these secret societies are more progressive on one side, and they're fighting to change things. That's the Washington Monument is a sign of male phallic erection. It's tall. And steeples originally represented the masculine patriarchal strength of the male, the white male. Later, they put crosses on them, on top of churches. So the flexing of the muscle that we're strong, we're the best. You go to the churches of Europe, they're basically mausoleums, whether that's the Anglican Church, and I've been in Canterbury, or the Catholic churches. They have soldiers buried in the walls and in the floors. It's all about fighting and militancy and territorialism and control. So there's a lot of violence in our religions, and a lot of violence and violations and viciousness in the secret societies. They own the banks. The gold in Fort Knox hasn't been there in years. Big names like the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, some of these very powerful people, they're manipulating gold right now. They're manipulating money. We're going to a cashless society. I can't get into all of that, but there's a lot going on out there. A lot of it's quite intimidating, quite frightening, and they're very powerful. If they could upset an election the way some of these QAnon people believe, then that means they're very, very powerful. It's not just the Republican Party. It's not Nancy or Pelosi, and it's not McConnell. It's something bigger, deeper, broader, badder than both. And we don't have to worship. We don't have to worship, but you have to reverence. It's like a storm. When you see a storm coming, there's nothing you can do but protect yourself. You can't stop the storm if it's tornadic or if it's a tsunami, and that's what's coming, folks. The change is going to be so pronounced. A whole new culture is being ordained by the universe. Now, it looks vicious and it looks violent, but some of these things we just have to, just hold to his hand, God's unchanging, and just kind of stick in there and wait till the dust settles. It will settle, but it's going to get worse before it gets better. And finally, some of the most pronounced revelations that are going to stun this country at its core. We're about to find out over the next by the end of April, I think we'll be all scratching our heads, because what's about to come out is profoundly damaging, somewhat dooming and condemning, very frightening. And I'm saying to you listening, don't react. Let it come out. Let it occur. Stay your pace. Let's ride the storm out. And then when it's over, we have to rebuild, because it's going to be a lot of demolition, from people and around organizations and institutions. You're going to be surprised what you find out is out there. I tell you some of that by discernment and some of it by observation and investigation. It's not going to be easy, but we'll make it.
Thank you, Bishop Pearson. Dr. Stephen Ray.
Well, you know what? Just as Bishop was talking about the secret societies, I got kicked offline. I said, well, he's getting a little bit too close to the truth, because, technology will get you when the truth is being spoken. Well, I mean, I think I just want to lift up two things. Number one is that one of the reasons why I began not with a political analysis, but with a theological analysis, is that because of the history of our society, we overhumanize white people. And what I mean by we overhumanize them is when we begin to try to give rational reasons for their irrational behavior, the next step is then an invitation for us to forgive them for their irrational behavior. So because of that, what that means to me then is that certainly, I could go through a significant analysis, both in terms of sociocultural, psychological, about how people are seduced by QAnon and these other groups. But for me, I think that's counterproductive, at least for the goals that I have, because there is a significant way that our society's history of overhumanizing white people demands that we, what comes easy to me as someone in the Reformed tradition, just leave them to God and do what we need to do to fight on behalf of the people who are being harmed by this foolishness, and that we fight on behalf of the vision that we have for the world that we want to be. So, going back then to the foot of Sinai, right? I mean, I'm sure that there were a bunch of folk who were brokenhearted when Dathan and his crowd got swallowed up, and they were struck down, by
Illuminati got it.
Right. Something that's happened. He's frozen.
Oh my goodness.
Pastor Sue, take him out. Yeah.
Might be a weak signal.
Yeah.
What do you think he meant when he said overhumanizing, Bishop?
I think it is because we have a great tendency to say, let's think down the middle, if you understand what I'm saying. What I hear, and well, he's back, he can tell you more, but what I hear when Dr. Ray is calling overhumanizing, I mean that we have a great tendency to say, well, we all do wrong sometime, and we all don't see things right, and we have some issues on our side, and they have some issues on their side, and this is just what happens,
Not that bad. Yeah.
Humankind, you know what I'm saying? And so let's sing Kumbaya and all all get along. And I think that I hear him saying that we are not distinctly, clearly, and intentionally calling evil, and stop spraying perfume on it. It's wicked, and it's evil, and it's a stench, and we need to go ahead. Now that's what I got from the sermon, Dr. Ray.
I'd ask her what she thought. I was asking her what she thought you meant by overhumanizing.
Well, I mean, quite simply, by overhumanizing is that we always seek culturally to give people the benefit of the doubt and find rational reasons for their irrational behavior, even when that irrational behavior cashes itself out in burning down entire Black sides of town, right? Yeah. Burning down entire Black towns like Rosewood. I mean, we can just go down the list. And, if you look at each of those, even when people begin to talk about repentance, what they talk about is repentance and saying, but you have to understand they were products of their time. You have to understand this. You have to understand that. And I guess what my point is that if we have enough faith, as I do, in a gracious God, then I can leave them to God. I don't need to worry about them. I don't need to be concerned about providing them therapeutic sort of approaches. I don't need to be worried about being a vessel of reconciliation. What I need to be worried about are the people who are being hurt and harmed, and the communities that are being destroyed by the evil that they are doing in the world. Because at some point, whether it's on this side of the Jordan or the other, there will be recompense made. But the point is that to the extent that I invest myself in that, I am not stopping the harm that's being done because of what they are. So I think that becomes critically important. And I mean, I think one of the things that certainly embeds itself in Black religion, and this is, across the board, is that there is a way that because we have beheld the depth of evil and wickedness throughout our history here, that we seek goodness because we've seen such evil, but sometimes we're prone to seek goodness where there's none to be found. And by the time we realize that we've been on a fool's errand, they've already figured out another way to engage us in terms of the kinds of performance of evil that is a part of our history. But the root of it is, and thank you for the question, Bishop Pearson, the root of it is always demanding that we give the benefit of the doubt to white folk who are doing evil. Right? I'm not saying white folk, but white folk who are doing evil, we're always asked to give them the benefit of the doubt when no one else is being given that particular benefit of the doubt.
And we were taught to do that by being Christianized and colonialized and imperialized. They taught us the principles of Jesus, which we bought into, we love, we live. And you have, like in Charlottesville, when all those victims, family members, stood there and said, for the Christian witness, we forgive this guy. And I have tacitly observed us doing that repeatedly, sir, over the years. Because unforgiveness, they said, well, the Bible says if I don't forgive, I'm going to forgive you because I got to forgive you. Then I said, I don't want to forgive you. I don't feel to forgive you, but I'm afraid of hell. That God's going to not forgive me if I don't forgive you, because that's part of the Lord's Prayer. So we're really caught in a religious web that makes us conciliatory. And we put up with this stuff for all these years. And I think it's time, if any of you had a chance to watch One Night in Miami recently, I mean, we should discuss it one of these times, Bishop, because it's pretty powerful. The conversation, I'm more and more respecting Malcolm X than I ever have. The longer this thing happens, I like his mentality, and I think he was a decent man. But I'm to the place where I'm not planning to tacitly accept racism as a legitimate Christian expression. I understand that it's a human expression. All of us are guilty of racism in certain areas. But my thing has never been just with Trump. It's been all these Christians laying hands on him, praying for him, now praying literally on a golden image of him. That's total outright idolatry. And it's like it's the people who support him. I'm not surprised by anything he's done or will do. I am stunned and disappointed by the Christian support he has, because its bottom line is tribalism, racism, arrogance, ignorance, pride, and lust for money.
Yes.
Well, one thing I will say, Bishop, and I want to, and then I'll be quiet for a little bit, but when we talk about forgiveness in Scripture, if folk don't hear anything else I say tonight, hear this. Don't mistake a prescription for personal relationships with a public policy prescription. Right? Jesus didn't make a public policy prescription so that forgiveness becomes policy. He counseled it as a personal relationship. And so if you don't take anything else away, that distinction is critically important.
Thank you. I got it. Wow.
Good.
That's great. That's great.
That's very good, sir.
Very good.
All of it.
Go home now. I'm done.
I like that. That's good. That's all of that's good.
Wonderful.
You got to put that in the notes somewhere, Bishop Vanessa Brown. I do believe that it's sort of like this during slavery that a slave would say, you know, my master's a good master. First of all, that's an oxymoron.
I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
My master's a good master. He only beats us like once a month.
Uh-huh.
You understand? And when he beats us, he doesn't beat to open the skin.
He don't bring blood.
You know, he don't bring blood. He don't put marks on us, you know? Mm-hmm. And then after he beats us, he give us all a half a watermelon.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I think that we are progressing toward what it is that you all have lifted up so beautifully tonight. We're progressing toward an intolerance for evil.
Yeah.
Even if it is paired with something that is in the text. Mm-hmm. There's an intolerance. And I've lived long enough to see several stages of freedom marches and several levels of preaching and teaching around freedom. And I remember the marching for voters' rights. And I remember marching for equal rights for Black people. And I remember for bus rides. And I remember marching for women's rights and marching for LGBT rights and HIV medication access rights. But we have evolved. We have morphed into what became the Black Lives Matter March. And this one terrified white people.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the first time that Black people had been in the street asking for equal rights. It wasn't the first time. The marches on Washington were tenfold bigger. Huge marches. Yeah. Huge, filled the whole plaza from the front to the back with no violence, I might add. Mm-hmm. All of that reality. But what was unique about this one was the copious numbers of non-Black people.
Mm-hmm.
That is a metamorphosis. That's a shift among the younger people, millennials and younger, that were there in significant numbers, who didn't just march to wear a sign, they marched to put their bodies in the way of tear gas and rubber bullets. They stood around, created a phalanx of protection around Black folks to demonstrate their connection. Now that was an evolution for me to watch it. Not only did they do it once, they did it for weeks. It just kept going and going and going from city. Everybody said, well, at least I hope they through. No, here they come. And this time is 15,000 of them, right?
Yeah.
It was an incredible metamorphosis and an evolution, which suggests a couple of things. And so this is what I would posit tonight. I would also say that the real players in change are just now really finding themselves. Because it took a little while. When a group of people think that a bunch of people of color can change all the voting machines in the United States, they're giving you a whole lot of power.
Yeah.
That's a whole lot of power. They think that a bunch of minority group of folks in Georgia can flip and turn Georgia not purple but plum blue. That's a whole lot of power.
And confidence.
We didn't even know we had that much power. Okay.
Yeah.
The kind of power that they're ascribing to us and trying to make laws to keep us from having. If we would wake up, and this is something I would say to all of the communities that are hearing us, if we would wake up and just embrace the power that those that are fighting against justice think we have, if we would embrace it and believe that we have what they think we have.
Powerful, yeah.
We would not need the next evolution to come to show us how powerful we are. We would be able to embrace it today.
Very true.
The people who handpicked the Supreme Court could not get the new people on the court who know that they have a lifelong appointment, could not get them to vote in the ways that they instructed them to vote in relationship to this election. They could not get them to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how heartily disappointed they must be, because they put them in there, they rushed and did it, and it still didn't work. What am I saying to you? If I were to say something to our communities today, communities of color, anyone who feels marginalized, marginalization among women, marginalization among justice-seeking people of faith, marginalization among anyone dismissed and pushed to the curb because of your orientation or your identity, what your ethnicity, whatever the reality may be, any marginalization, if you could believe in you, if we could believe in us, the way the people that fight us believe in us. Imagine what we could accomplish.
Good point.
Let's start thinking like that. Let's start understanding that. We don't need a golden calf. We didn't have to have a golden Trump statue. We didn't have to storm the Capitol. We strategized and voted in Georgia.
Yeah.
No guns, no QAnon, no flags, no all that crazy foolishness and all that foolishness. We didn't have to do none of that. We just listened to the Constitution, read the thing, listened to it, acted on it, and fought for our own rights. Let's believe in ourselves.
Thank you, Bishop. I want to, first of all, again, thank the Facebook Live audience for being with us. I want to thank YouTube audience for being with us. And I want to take some questions very quickly. And so if you have questions, we want you to put question, and then we want you to write your question. Here is one from Spirit Love. It says, so do you think the slave mentality from the slave's Bible is still so instilled in us that we're willing to continue to forgive? And you all can answer that question in any order you choose.
I elect Dr. Ray.
Well, I think, and thank you for that, Bishop. I think that we give too much credence to that story about the slave Bible. And the reason why I say that is because what every bit of evidence shows us is that even when the slaves were preached to from that Bible, they were preached to in another way, in other spaces that affirmed their humanity and gave them a different kind of hope for the future. Now, what we're bound up with is something that I was talking about a bit earlier, is that we were deeply afraid, and there was a good book by this title, of becoming the monsters that we beheld, right? So you can become the monster that you behold. And we were deeply concerned that the evil which we beheld could corrupt us so that we were no better than that. And what that ended up doing then was touching what is at one of the core of the Christian faith. And the core of the Christian faith, on my reading, is that it's about what your heart does. And we can see what your heart is by what you do in the world. Right? So those two things are connected. And so frequently what has been described as slave religion is more us battling for the soul of ourselves and the soul of our people when we are daily being seduced by the evil which we behold, that's seeking to make us no better than those who are visiting evil upon us. Now, is that a right way to do it? I mean, we can talk about that, but I much prefer to think about it that way than to try to write it off in terms of some ignorant appropriation of a slave religion that was given to us. It's really a moral response to centuries and generations of being seduced by the very evil that you face every day.
And not just seduce, they wanted to reduce us and make us less than who we were when we came over. Anybody who could survive the Middle Passage, laying in the bottom of ships, in your own vomit, sometimes your own urine, your own defecation. And the females who went through their cycles and chained down and seasickness, how we survived that is miraculous. Before they ever read a scripture to us, before they ever told us about the Christ or the cross, there was something in those people, 30 million of us, that were taken off of the continent over the years. And we lasted. What they did want to do is reduce us from that tenacity, that powerful resilience. I mean, they can't even imagine the kinds of things that happened to slaves in the separation just of the motherland, then their families and the humiliation and the children screaming, being taken from their parents and husbands, from their wives and fathers. I mean, that like you said, Dr. Ray, watching those kinds of movies brings stuff up. It's like I was there in another life, and I remember the pain and the pathos. So we have been both seduced but we haven't been reduced. We have not lost our spiritual character. That's one of the things behind the whole Pentecostal expression, according to what I understood Bishop Mason had in mind, is for the Black people in this country to re-tap into their African spirituality, which gave them an ability to transcend one reality and create another one, whether it's religion or not. I think we have that now. That's still working in us quite powerfully, but we need to reclaim our transcendence. We need to go into a trance spiritually and connect with the seers and hearers in the other realms and come back with some fresh answers. And we're doing that. We're being forced to pray differently and to seek God at another level that nobody can take from us.
I like that. My whole Pentecostal self got happy when you said it. So I think of it this way. I call it idolized supremacy. That is what I think the intent was, to use scripture to defend supremacy. Idolized supremacy is even more toxic than supremacy. Because if you can make it somehow the will of the divine and then idolize it, the bottom line, or what comes after that, is that anyone who is different is unholy. Anyone who is other is unholy. And then that gives rise to diminish anyone who is othered, which is and here's the real oxymoronic thing to me. Here's a group of people who came to these shores from various kinds of oppression and also for purposes of adventure and manifest destiny, essentially, and to take over, But they came to these shores, say all of them that are European in terms of their background. They were from distinct backgrounds, distinct lands, distinct languages, distinct religions, distinct kingdoms, governments. They all came here. They were something when they came here. They were English, they were French, they were German, they were Russian, they were, what am I missing?
Irish.
All of that, and they got together and seemed like made a decision. Let's make us a race. What are we going to be? We're going to be white. What is white? Whatever's not black or whatever's not brown or colored in any way. It's white. It's the blue blood test. If you understand, if it's blue bloodish enough, it's white. And they made them a whole race. It's an amazing thing. And then this is not a long time ago. This happened just not that long, right? In the last couple 100 years. That's amazing to me. A whole race. And then that race together cumulatively began to identify itself in the ways in which the reading of the Hebrew Bible at times identifies the Jews, which we get all confused. Are you Jew because you're from Palestine?
Right.
Are you Jew by religion? And some of the strongest and most political Jews are European Jews. I know I got that right, by the way.
You're right.
All right. And the concept of becoming superior is something that is easily read into the text. You just superimpose whatever it is you are onto that reality. Now, which means we got to push back, not against the slave passages, but we got to push back against the evil of thinking and the ridiculousness of thinking that because of our bloodline in some way, that makes us in some magical, mystical way superior to everyone else. And why am I saying that? And then I'll get off this. I'm saying it because we're already all mixed up.
All of us.
So who's talking to you when you get up? Is that your Native American self? Is that your European self? Is that your, come on, talk to me. Who is that? Is that your African self? I know how I identify, but I got a lot of different stuff moving around inside of me. That is what needs to end. We need to stop doing that and move on to something that says I have an ancestral line that influences me perhaps more than other ancestral lines. And I identify most with that. But in reality, I realize that all humankind is loved by the divine equally and lovingly. That's a huge step for us, by the way.
Thank you, Bishop. I want to make this statement. Pastor Kevin E. Tiller said they constructed race because they could not transcend class where they came from. And Kelly Isola said, idolize supremacy, divine will and laws of nature, the first pillar in our American caste system. And so we have a question. We have several, but I know you all see them, but I am not going to ask some of these questions that are over to the right. This particular question says, how much of a role did eugenics play in Christianity?
None.
Oh,
and the reason I say none is because the entire eugenics movement, which began in the late 19th century and came into the 20th century, was a movement about two things. One, purifying the blood. So it wasn't just Black people. It was actually the majority of people who were sterilized in the eugenics movement were actually in Appalachia. White people in the mountains of Appalachia. And it was more something that came from public health, misguided ideas about public health. Now, the Nazis took it to an entirely different level, but in terms of there were Christians that were involved, but the eugenics movement was not a Christian movement.
The whole idea of white trash, the term came from rich white people. Not Black. We would never have said something like that.
Yeah.
The whole idea of artificial intelligence now, the creation of robots and and cars that drive without human agency, that's the newest form of eugenics. That they are trying, same spirit behind Hitler doing the ethnic cleansing of Germany. The Germans thought they were the purest human germ on the planet, and they use religion to burn the Jews, saying that they are the Jesus killers. And that's why the Catholic Church was complicit. That's why the United States sort of looked the other direction until a lot of it was done, because we've always had this false idea that Jews killed Jesus. Really, Romans killed Jesus. Italians, not Jews. So, but getting back to the whole idea of eugenics, I know that there is an attitude in this country that everybody should be Americanized or Westernized, who come here. We go as evangelists into other parts of the world to Westernize, colonialize, and imperialize those people. So that's a form of eugenics, trying to make everybody like us. That's where we need to take a good long look. Even we African Americans, we need to take a good long look at how we view other people, other ethnicities, anybody, as Bishop Flunder alluded to, anybody that's marginalized for any reason, that's considered less than because they're not like. That is a core trait in the human spirit of tribalism and arrogance and racism. So we need to work on that as a country and as a culture, and help change our consciousness altogether. It may end up being a natural disaster that forces us all into dropping blankets on each other rather than bombs. When some natural disaster and everybody's hungry, tsunami, earthquake, the hurricanes, people stop thinking race as much. They think of the human race and they race to be survivalists. That's usually when natural disasters occur. The universe says we have to have an earthquake somewhere because people have stopped being human. We have to make them human again and feel for humanity and help each other through the pain. That may be coming still. I hope it doesn't, but that may be coming. Natural disasters, increasingly.
They are increasing.
Yeah. The news is not carrying it, but you're right, Bishop. The news is not telling the stories, but they're all over. There are more earthquakes, more natural volcanoes erupting, and people are losing a lot. We don't know what's happening in South Sahara. Talking about killing folks, they have taken our attention off of Africa, Asia, and India. Things are happening. They're killing people. Who knows? We only know what the news tells us, and the news tells us what they want us to know. They're not reporting things that I know are happening in other realms of the country right now and of the world that are hideous. But our attention has been on Trump, and it's been on the Republicans, and been on American politics, and now the pandemic. But we only know what they tell us. If you have friends in foreign countries, they'll give you a different report than you might hear on the news. And I have friends across the planet. And it's not the way the news portrays it. Whoever controls the news, they tell us what they want us to know. That's a real serious concern that I have, and we should all have. We don't need to be worried about it, but we need to take everything with a grain of salt.
Thank you, Bishop Pearson. And so I think this is my last question to you all. And I'll start with Dr. Stephen Ray. Dr. Stephen Ray, do you think that there's any redemption for these people at all?
In God, all things are possible. Is it my concern to redeem them? No, because I trust a gracious and loving God to be merciful with them. What I'm seeking are the people who are what I'm seeking to do is struggle on behalf of the people who are being crushed and destroyed by an unjust system that has put redemption out of their reach because they've already been cursed to the 6th and 7th ring of hell before they even get to be 30 years old.
That's good. Bishop Pearson.
A part of me wants to say, God, just kill them all, kill some of them, send an earthquake or something, bomb. That's my human part gets angry, and I don't want just redemption. I want punishment. Now that's my fleshly, ego, angry part. My spirit, I'm exactly what Dr. Ray said. In the spirit of Christ, redeem them, cleanse them, correct them, purge them, purify, educate. That's the better way. It just takes so long. We're dealing with centuries of injustice, century of some of the worst treatment that human beings have ever had. And as, again, the President mentioned earlier, watching some of these movies that highlight what actually happened makes me physically nauseous. I have to be in a certain state of mind because that already happened. Those people suffer. I was watching something on the news the other night about some of the injustice that's been happening in Nigeria of late with killed Nigerians, killing Nigerians, disemboweling, dismembering their bodies, beheading them. I mean, thousands, and nobody did anything about it. So the depths to which some human beings have sunk or can sink with regards to how they treat other human beings just boggles my mind. I consider that demonic, if I can use that term. So we need a real powerful spiritual renewal to even be able to forgive. Forgiveness is a creative thing. Create in me a clean heart. Renew within me a right spirit. Lord, I believe, help thy mine unbelief. So I'm in that place where I'm wrestling with my ego, my flesh, natural anger, wanting to fix things and correct things, and then trust the mercy of God, the judgments of God, if that exists, and something that brings out some kind of polarity that is healing and reconstructive. And I believe that's coming. We just have to wait.
Yes. Bishop Flunder.
Well, I have days I feel one way, and other days I feel other ways. Sometimes my heart is precious and full of love, and sometimes I just want to, punch people in the throat. And that's just kind of how it moves back and forth in my human emotions.
Yeah.
And I want to be honest about that. But I know that we are dealing with some people who are desperate people. and desperate people do desperate things. And so what do I believe? I believe it will probably not shift and change a great deal with the generations that are alive. They've invested too many years in the golden calf of white supremacy. And they've invested such that they've built neighborhoods around it, churches around it, businesses around it, made money doing it. I do have, however, confidence and hope in their children. I've met a lot of their children. I pastor a lot of their children.
Yeah.
And am engaged in conversation with a lot of their children. And I have great hope in these young people. Education is power.
Yeah.
But integration is power. When you start getting in and around people who are different from you, you can dispel a lot of the myths just with your experience. The other thing I know about young people is they like to be different from their parents. Hallelujah.
Yes.
They just get great joy. I have raised grown people, and I know that you all have too. So you know that when they get up grown, the first thing they want to do is to tell you you don't know what you're talking about. That's the first order of business.
Yes.
So I am watching that happening. It is the way that the bird gets out of the nest. You know, there's a point at which a bird is so big, it's the same size as its parents, and the parents need for them to get out.
Yes, get out the nest.
Still don't know how to fly. And we have to have the parental courage at some point to tell them you got the wings, get up out of here, and you have to push them for them to realize that they can fly. Well, a lot of them have been pushed, and they've been pushed in the direction of justice. And there's something very powerful about that reality. So I do have hope. I think of Kelly Conway and her daughter as an example of what it is that I'm saying. Here's a mouth
every time.
That girl, when I tell you she's something, I don't know how to even feed her. Because they stay so mad at her. First it was her and her husband fighting. And then now here come my daughter. And then she had to leave the White House. She was a distraction. Her family was quite something to deal with, right? So I think that to some degree and I want to end by echoing something that Bishop Pearson said a minute ago. What is going on in the world? You know, and you're right. Etna is blowing up. She's an old volcano, and she's come to life again. There's still huge locust realities.
Yes.
In certain parts of West Africa and East Africa. The realities of girls being stolen again in Nigeria.
375 girls. They were
at
just
one time.
Yes.
Taken to be sex slaves, essentially called wives, but taken to be sex slaves, taken by Muslim men because they are virgins. They are taken because they are virgins.
Yeah.
As young as 11 and 12 years old. That's a part of that. And so is evil going on in the world? Yes, it is going on in the world in all sorts of places. But I live with the confidence. I do have to believe. I don't know how all of our colleagues and beloved that are listening to us here tonight, but my hope is built, the song said, on nothing less than Jesus, I say love.
Jesus, love and righteousness.
My hope is built on righteousness.
Yeah.
And I have to believe that good wins. I have to believe for the thing that Martin King died for. I have to believe that the arc of the universe will bend again toward justice. And that each time it bends, though it may be drawn back a bit, what we did going forward is greater than what we have lost. And so my hope is that the generations coming after us will be powerful. My hope, to Bishop Pearson's point, and to your point, Dr. Ray, but also to Bishop Pearson's point, I hope that we will see more that is happening in the world than what is given to us and fed to us daily, both the struggles and the victories. I pray that as we become more able to fly and go places and do things as human beings, we will become citizens of this planet.
Yeah.
And not simply citizens of the current madness that is the United States of America. And that people who are prejudiced and dealing with supremacy and racism will grow the hell up.
Yeah.
How about
and
that?
Stop acting like children.
Yeah.
You are never going to get your stuff back. I declare for God and a host of respectable people, Before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave.
Mhm.
And while I'm on my way to dying, I will whip your behind as I'm headed toward my death. What I'm saying to you is that time has come and gone. You're not going to get it back. We're not going to do it. We're through with it. We're not going to get over it. We're not going to get it back.
It's going to say, grow the hell up, Bishop.
Grow the hell up. That's what grow the hell up. And take your Trump statues and your toys and your things and your 1,700 guns and grow the hell up. That is the word from the Lord. God,
that's good.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
We could take a collection on that right there.
I got it.
It's done. It's over. Grow the hell up. God bless you tonight. Thank you all. Bishop Pearson, Dr. Stephen Ray. I know you had a long day. Bishop Pearson, you had a long day. Bishop Flunder, you had a long day. But I thank God for you. So does Facebook Live audience. So does YouTube. I know that people will continue to like and share this conversation. Even after this goes off broadcast, we appreciate you so very much. We have a few announcements for you. We want to tell you how we would love for you to support this ministry, this broadcast by giving. And so we ask that you would go to Beyond the Gatekeepers and please support our broadcast by sending a donation via Cash App to $TFM annual, and you just make sure you put Beyond the Gatekeepers. If you are enjoying these conversations, we want you to give towards it. PayPal us, PayPal, go to www.paypal.me/TFM Justice and share it with your friends and family and those that need to hear this conversation. And you can also ask them to give as well. We have also the Healing Place Apothecary. This business is by Nubian Flunder. She is the LAC and founder, and we are asking you to support this business. I have several times, and I want you to do the same. Go to www.thehealingplaceapothecary.com. That's www.thpapothecary.com. Like I said, you got to get a t-shirt, and we're introducing the Dope Black collection. Dope Black pastor, minister, mom, teacher. So many things are there. Go to the website. We can customize shirts for you too. Sky Michelle's Tees and Things. Sky Michelle's Tees and Things. Go to www.skymichelle.com. And Kara Solutions, focus on your passion. Let Kara handle the rest. Administrative, business, and consulting services for dreamers, visionaries, entrepreneurs, faith and community-based organizations. Please support by going to www.kara-solutions.com. If you want to advertise with Beyond the Gatekeepers, please email us at beyondthegatekeepersshow@gmail.com. That's beyondthegatekeepersshow@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us tonight. Again, support our broadcast by sending in a donation. We love you so much. We say God bless you. Thank you for joining us.